Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anyone listening in podcast land. This is The Great Exchange, the podcast where we take a bit of a deep dive on some sort of media that one of us is interested in. We suggest it to the other and we chat about it. Today, once again, I'm joined by Mr. Warren Gary. He's the voice of the Discus Lariat Collective podcast. It's a class podcast just about all things kind of professional wrestling world. Yeah, so Warren, how's the form? How are you?
I'm good, yeah. Cannot complain. Just a bit warm. It's not used to actually having this kind of weather right now. Like it's fairly breezy, but I'm actually sweating.
It's like it's sticky weather or something, isn't it? It's like it's
It
kind
is,
of
yeah.
rainy, but it's still sticky. I hate that shit. Like,
But yeah, not
yeah,
too bad apart from that.
yeah, that's good. How's the podcast going? I've seen his lads are like lashing up the content. That's class. Like, some really good topics and stuff. I've been binge watching a few videos myself. So how's that going?
That's good, yeah. Like we're just trying to, instead of like sticking to just reviews constantly now, week in, week out, trying to like jump into other bits like fantasy booking shows, fantasy booking characters, this, that, and the other, and like what if kind of moments, stuff like that. So yeah, just trying to get a broader grasp across like different things in the wrestling world right now. But
Deadly.
yeah, still enjoying it.
Yeah. So I seen some of the stuff that you're doing like on the classic. I was actually talking to the lads. You know, O'Shane, you obviously know Osh, but he was saying that he was
Yeah.
watching one classic about I think it was the NWA and WWE or something like that. He's like, it was actually very good. Tell them if you're talking to them. So that's Osha's shout out for you. He was watching it. So there you go.
Oh, cheers for that.
So I was trying to get a crack with you now. I'm hoping now, hopefully soon, we might actually be able to meet up and have a beer and fucking shoot the shit if that's something we'd be into. But we never know. Hopefully, when this lockdown is fucks off. So.
Oh yeah, I'm getting sick of it now. Like I'm back to work now, whatever this week, but hopefully now we don't have any other setbacks now. Do you know what I mean? Because every time we seem to open this country up, it goes back like 5 steps. So
I know, yeah.
hoping to get that over and done with now. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get me hopes up too much because the last time that happened, we were back at square one. But look, sure, we'll keep our fingers crossed anyway. So I don't know. So Warren, if you want to get into this, I think Warren's going to give us a synopsis. The movie that I had suggested to him was a movie called Pump Up the Volume. It's kind of a quirky movie from the 90s, but I'll let Warren do the rundown if you fancy it.
Yeah, I give this the old college through, but because I'm not one for like synopsis. I'm always like, yeah, this
it's
happens.
a movie, yeah.
Just, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah. So you recommended Pump Up the Volume, film from 1990, starring Christian Slater. It's
The man.
about yeah, that's the thing. What an actor! Like,
He's class, isn't he?
very underrated. He's actually
Yeah.
very underrated. I think it's kind of dropped off near the late 90s. Got a lot of work done on the face, and people didn't recognize him when he came back.
Yeah,
But,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, Pump Up the Volume about high school guy, kind of, I suppose you could say almost stereotypical disenchantment kind of thing. He's just like, yeah, not feeling high school, not feeling authority, not feeling trying to get a job, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Decided to start up a pirate radio station under a moniker where he doesn't give his real name, stuff like that. Almost kind of, what would you say, broadcasting his disillusionment
Yeah.
and against everything. Pretty much, he's completely anti everything.
He's anti everything. The man. He doesn't like the man. Yeah, whoever that
No,
is.
he doesn't. Yeah, down with the man. Yeah, but he yeah, it kind of gets it a bit out of control to the point where like students and teachers and all get involved, where it's the students blasting it everywhere around the school, graffiti, this, that, and the other, riots borderline, and yeah, the FCC and the, what you call them, the student or the teacher, what would you call it? I don't know, the rest
Body,
of
I
it.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, the governing bodies and stuff
Yeah.
get involved, and it kind of goes down a bit of a dark path there for them. But yeah, overall, hell of a film.
Yeah.
Very 90s.
Very 90s, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's the one. There's an absolute banging 90s off this film. Like I actually seen it. I was listening to some of our podcasts. It was actually about like just general recommendations for stuff, like, and they were talking about this really briefly. I can't even remember what the name of the podcast was now, but they said this one. I was like, I've never seen that before. Sounds kind of interesting. So I stuck it on, and like what you said, you hit the nail on the head there with the synopsis. That's kind of the general gist of it. Like just a fella who has a radio station, and we'll his moniker he broadcast by Happy Harry Hardon. But yeah, it's good. And then there's also the lady aspect of this, the woman in his life, or she becomes in his life. She basically makes it her mission to kind of find out who he is and
Yeah.
stuff. By the way, just if anybody listening to this, there will be some spoilers because it's out since 1990. So what do you expect?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of hard to talk, especially this kind of film. It's hard to talk without spoilers because from the
100%.
get go, it's just it's all there. Like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and also it kind of the events in the film actually lead to everything. I know that's the way with most films, but this one is very kind of specific, so you have to talk about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the crack. So hit me with it, Warren. What was your overall feeling the first watch? So first time I seen it, as I said, I thought it was quirky and a bit different. As I said, absolute banging 90s off it. I think it's a little bit dated, but it's kind of not in a bad way. But
Yeah.
that was my kind of first interpretation. So hit me with it. What was your first interpretation?
Yeah. So like you said, it definitely shows its age off the
Yeah.
bat.
Yeah.
Not particularly a bad thing though. Do you know what I mean? Especially like the likes of myself, like you were probably the same, like a lot of 90s music, this, that, and the other. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of, you're like, it's almost like a love letter to that. Which I like. What else? Yeah, in general though, I thought when I first watched it straight away after the first, say, maybe half an hour, it's like, this reminds me of that film, The Boat That Rocked, about the pirate
Oh,
radio
yes.
with Philip Seymour Hoffman in it.
Yeah.
And that's the, like, I've seen that, I've never seen this one. So I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. I liked the fact that it was, what would you say? I don't know how you would word it. It's like that same feeling that everyone has around that age when you're 16, 17.
Yeah.
You're like, I hate teachers, I hate school, I hate everything, that kind of thing.
100%.
But yeah, I actually enjoyed it, and especially like the big part that I enjoyed is the girl and the trying to figure out who he was.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually more interesting than most parts of the film. Like in terms of like it's great hearing him, and his speeches that he does are fantastic. Obviously, like, he's a great actor, Christian Slater. But
the monologues are brilliant. Yeah.
They really are. They're amazing. But I found myself kind of more intrigued with her part of it. Like we had the whiteboard in the room and stuff, and like, oh, well, he sits on his own at the stairs, eating lunch, reading books, this, that, and the other. And she kind of wants to obviously figure out who it is. And I like that more so because with films like this, especially teen dramas and stuff like that, they like the main character always has that holier than thou kind of attitude. And it does kind of grate on you sometimes because you're older now, do you know what I mean? But if you had to watch that when you were 17, you would be like,
it would have related. He's my dude.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, they actually really liked it. And it flew in as well. It's weird. It went on for like an hour and 40 minutes. It felt like it went on for about half an hour. I was like, what?
It's always a good sign of a good film, isn't it? Though, like when it
is, yeah.
It kind of, I suppose the thing about this as well, like as you said there, the 90s and I think the soundtrack deserves a bit of a mention as well. Like it's got some bangers on, and I actually started listening to a lot of Leonard Cohen when I watched this first, because one of the songs is kind of, I think it's probably his like intro or theme tune to his radio broadcast. It's a song called Leonard Cohen, Everybody Knows, but it's just, I obviously can't describe it, but it's definitely it's a banger of a tune. It's got the Pixies, it's got the Beastie Boys and everything, so it's a really good soundtrack. So I think that kind of deserves a mention. But a good point about the characters we touched on there about Christian Slater. Like he like absolutely, I think he's like such an underrated actor, like, because I think, and around this time maybe he was just about to kind of launch off, and it's kind of like he never completely became like a superstar, but he's always in these films or roles that are like kind of out there but alternative. Like Mr. Robot is probably his kind of latest thing, and he kind of plays that out there kind of guy as well. So but I haven't seen him in that like since, really. I can't remember anything off the top of my head. Like,
no, I've only ever seen him in Pump Up the Volume, Headers, and Mr. Robot. I think that's really it. But I've seen like clips of him from different films, like on Watch Mojo kind of stuff. Do you know, them kind of compilation videos and stuff? Or them kind of clickbait videos, like why Hollywood will never book Christian Slater again, that kind of thing.
The drama.
But he's really good, and I think I must look up his filmography as well from after this film, because this feels like a standout performance. Do you know what I mean? Like one of them that put you on the map. So I must check that out, see what he was in after, like directly after it.
And he was still obviously young enough to play a high school student, so he wasn't that also. Yeah, you're right. It's probably like his coming out kind of thing. But I did have a quick look at it, and I said I seen that one, Headers, which is apparently like it was a big enough film, but I didn't see anything worth noting. But maybe that's just me. I haven't actually seen anything else. But overall, and then the second character you mentioned, the love interest, or the girl in it, I think her name is Nora, if I have that right.
I think it's Nora, yeah.
But she, as you said, so she like the whole school becomes transfixed with his broadcast and basically whatever. But she kind of then starts unraveling the pieces a bit. And as you said, like that's a really cool part because she's listening for the little clues, and then she kind of has this little whiteboard where she's putting them together, and she eventually finds out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, she's a really good character as well. She kind of, the two of them kind of find each other through that, and it's good.
Yeah.
So overall, about the premise of the film or the plot, like, you know, this guy disenchanted has a like a pirate radio. What did you think of the plot? Like, was it much of a plot, or how did you feel about it?
I think it was, especially for like at that time, like in the 90s. I wouldn't say there was a lot of films like this.
Mm,
Because it's one of them that would probably be looked at as a cult classic more so than anything else. Like,
mm.
I suppose you could put it in the same bracket as like The Warriors. The Warriors is a fantastic film for a lot of people,
That's a
but when it
brilliant
came
film.
out, yeah, but when it came out, it was kind of like, yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
low
Whenever
budget,
it,
just yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that's the thing I think as well with the likes of the Warriors. Obviously, it came out around the same time as I think Star Wars, the first ever Star Wars. I think it was the same year or a year after or
Aye.
something like that. So a lot of people are into blockbusters there at the time. So it was probably the same with this. But overall, in terms of the plot, I liked it. I like the fact that he has a persona like day to day and skill and stuff. He's just quiet. He
Yeah.
doesn't really speak out. Doesn't have friends, stuff like that. He's very to himself, and then he has that larger than life persona,
Mm.
and I like that. I think that's as well like a little nod to, well, for me it's a nod to wrestling as well, because like a lot of wrestlers, the whole idea of a character is you like turn yourself up to 11 kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So
100%. Yeah.
I like that. And I like the fact that he was, I don't know, it's strange. Like I like the idea of the plot and how it went through. Like, is, as we were saying, his monologues
Mm.
fantastic, and it ended up obviously inciting a lot of, say, like graffiti, what you call it, like the riot kind of part as well. There was
Yeah.
a lot of it, just stored the shit essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, and I like the idea of that, but I kind of hate characters like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I almost it just grates on me because I'm like, how are you? Why are you like? What makes you that person? Why can you tell these people to do this, but your ma can't tell you to clean your room before, and you start throwing a tantrum? Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, it's a bit cringe. Like, you know what I mean, when that
Yeah.
comes across. But again, as I said, we've all kind of gone through that. We've all like, oh, I hate this, I hate that. So he almost comes across as like an anti-hero.
Yeah.
And what I liked as well is about the love interest or Nora. I think it's cool that she wasn't just almost fawning over him. Like, it was like the plot point was that she was almost hard nosed a bit. You know what I mean? She was almost like his character more so
Yeah.
than him personally. So that's what I liked as well.
Yeah.
She was more of a Harry hard on than he actually was
Yeah.
day to
Yeah.
day. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. Do you know what I mean?
That's a very good point. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. Like, she kind of a stronger character, and I think there's a bit about this film that's probably a bit ahead of its time and stuff like that. But we'll probably get onto it a bit later. But like some of the callers that he had into the show, like, so, you know, he would get them to write into a PO box, and he would get them to attach a number. Then he'd give them a call during the show, and some of it is very, as we'll touch on it now, it gets a bit dark, and then some of it, you know, kind of voicing, like, people who are gay and they have these struggles, whatever, and he's trying to talk them through it, whatever. But then that character is like that constantly. Nora, we're talking about, she's like that constantly, where he's this guy behind the microphone, and then in day to day he's this quiet, reserved dude and shy. But yeah, no, that's a really good point actually.
Yeah.
I think looking back, there's a couple of things that I wanted to because I was watching it last night, and without getting too heavy into it, but there's a couple of things. So it's interesting nowadays, right? When you think about like back in the 90s, right? In order to kind of get an alternate opinion on stuff, you had to look out for like these like pirate radio shows. Whereas nowadays, like, people can just go online or go onto like a podcast or YouTube, whatever, and it's there for everybody to see. So I thought that was an interesting thing. This film is kind of dated in the sense that, you know, there are pirate radio shows. That's what we're talking about. But at the same time, this stuff still goes on. It's just in a different form now. Like YouTube or podcast are the pirate radio format now that it was probably back in the, do you know? So
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great show.
yeah, I thought that was interesting. And the other, it's relevant. Like, the main character is like using this radio station. The other thing about this is that, like, he feels things are unjust, so he's like talking about it. But as we'll get into again, it has consequences. And in today, like, I don't know, without getting too deep into it, but you always hear about some shit online where someone said something and now they're being cancelled or something like that, you know, the kind of way. So
Yeah.
I think that's also very relevant in today's kind of climate or whatever you call it. And then the main takeaway that I have again is, like, it's also important for people who have alternative thoughts, like the body of the school or the people in that area, to kind of, that they have a voice, and because they kind of feel voiceless. And part of this is about them kind of reacting to him because he's like, well, he's saying everything that he thinks, and why can't we say that? So
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts on that, but that was kind of my when I watched this again, I was like, that's actually interesting. It's kind of standing out.
Yeah, yeah, dead on as well. Because with the likes of that, as you said, with the kids in school or the school body and stuff, and they're like, oh, he's just saying whatever he thinks off the top of his head, not a bother to him. But obviously, like when he's in school, he wouldn't, I suppose, look sideways at someone. Do you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
I think that's good as well, because nowadays, I suppose, when you look at that, everyone is almost I suppose you're kind of pushed to have your own opinions and this, that, and the other. But again, when it comes to school or an institution, a job, anything like that, it's almost a collectivist kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like, right, make sure you're there on time, make sure you do this, clock out, and then go home and do the same thing again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And understandably so, you do get frustrated, whether it's your job in real life, like to this day, like people do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like before the pandemic, I get pissed off at my job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Clocking in, doing the same stuff, listening to the same shit with different customers, and then going home, and yeah, you get whatever, a total of 8 hours at home or 10 hours at home.
As
Half
you're
of that
talking about
sleeping.
menopausal women that don't have PS5s for their kids.
Yeah, they don't understand like that life doesn't work to suit you. Do you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
your kid. Like at the end of the day, I suppose it's the definition of life doesn't owe you anything. Do you know what I mean?
No, you're
And
dead on.
I think that's what's cool about this, because like the teacher's freaking out and stuff, like, oh my god, he's playing this song, or he's saying this, and at one stage he talks about one of the guidance counselors as well, and how he suspended someone, I think it is, and it's almost like, oh, touchy subject, but again,
Mhm.
it shouldn't be. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Why are you hiding this? Just be out straight, just be yourself.
Yeah.
But again, obviously that comes with repercussions or consequences, as you could say, because in the day to day it will. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can go on the internet and say like, oh, I want to say this, that, and the other to someone, and think I'm okay because I'm behind the keyboard. That's not how it works.
Keyboard warriors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's basically kind of what happens to him as well in the film. He
Yeah.
talks all this kind of mess and like, down with the man, da, 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 da. And it's actually funny because I watched that clip you sent me as well of Hal from Malcolm in the Middle doing
It's fucking
Charlemagne, kid Charlemagne.
brilliant.
Yeah, and he gets stopped by the police, and he's like, oh, you didn't yield to that stop sign, and he's like, oh, the police putting me down, stuff like that. But again, there's consequences to everything.
Yeah.
So I think I like the idea of how like the kids almost straight away they jump on it, because they're like, right, this is who we want to speak for us, because we
Yeah.
can't do it in this kind of collectivist part where we're in school.
Yeah.
So I like it. It's like, as you said, nowadays, if you want to go onto YouTube, you can look up something for an alternate opinion. And with the likes of people who are gay, or they don't know kind of where they stand right now, or they might be, say, depressed, lonely, all sorts, you can jump on a forum, you can jump on YouTube, you can jump on anything nowadays, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you'll always have that kind of helping hand almost. And I think back then, obviously in the 90s, you didn't have that. So you're looking for almost that beacon there. You're just like, oh yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
So
It was less
I
accessible
like
all
it.
over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good show, and I suppose kind of a bit of backstory to it, as it's going to be spoilers, but to Warren's point he was talking about. So his dad, I think, is like the commissioner of the school. He's like the equivalent of Superintendent Chalmers from The Simpsons. he like basically all the principals of the school report into him. So when this guy, I think, what's his name? He's Mark, I think is his name, in the character Christian Slater plays. He breaks into his dad's office and takes all these documents, and he basically splurts all this information about the school on the radio station. And then that's the consequence that we're talking about there. So like the school gets uppity about it. And then the next point that we'll touch on then, so one of his callers, who he calls this kid Malcolm. So as I said, there's going to be spoilers in this, but up until this point in the film, it kind of seems like it's this kind of irreverent comedy. It's just like, it's a comedy about this guy who says stupid shit on the radio. But Malcolm rings in, he's depressed, and he says, I'm going to kill myself. And he signs the letter, sincerely, I'm serious, or something like that, to that effect. What did you think at that point? Did you think that it took a swan dive into the more serious territory? And did you think that would kind of turn out the way it did?
Yeah, it definitely does take a swan dive. It's literally like two sides of a coin there. Like, I mean, it's, as you said, it's almost like comedy, this, that, and the other. Laughy, jokey, like the part where he's pretend to crank his hog on the pig and all shit like that. It's like 11 times today, all sort of stupid shit like that. You know what I mean? But stuff like that, like it seems funny, and then I think it's during one of the first or second broadcasts, you see that fella Malcolm, and he's like typing something, and he's saying, I'm going to kill myself or something, or should I kill myself? And it's like he deletes it almost or whatever, or it goes off, the camera goes off anyway. And then when he rings in and he says it to him, obviously it's like a dark cloud automatically. Just like the whole film just feels heavy for him in that scene where he's on the phone to him, and the character Christian Slater is playing Mark or whatever. He's like, oh, it's sometimes I feel lonely as well. But again, and then it's because he's playing the character that Harry Hardon fella, that guy Malcolm then doesn't. He feels like he's just taking the piss really, because he's like, you're not. How are you alone if millions of people here? Well, all the students in the school are listening to you. Do you know what I mean? I don't have that. I never will have that. That's probably how he's feeling. And I think, in fairness to him, I think Christian Slater, well, the character, did a good job of trying to talk the fella down. But again, you'd kind of have to come out of the character almost to talk someone down when it comes to that. You couldn't just be like, oh, don't worry, I get like that as well. You can't just, that's not how it works. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And I think it was a fairly real depiction of that, I think, especially for the 90s, because I'm sure films like that, like, they wouldn't really, especially at that time, they wouldn't kind of delve too much into that.
No.
Especially it's a child. You may as well say he's still under 18. He's a child essentially. So
16, 17 or whatever.
Yeah. So it's a heavy part of the film, and it goes back to that part where I was saying about it's your actions will have consequences.
Yeah.
So I think, as you said, when he's reading out all the bits and pieces from the school via board or whatever, and they get uppity about that there's a consequence. And then again, when he's talking to that young fella, and he, like, that young fella's not on that same level. They might be, day to day, they probably are, because, as we were saying, the character Mark, he's just a normal bloke in school. He doesn't have many friends, so actually they'd be one to one there. Oh, he's playing this large and live character. Oh, look, everyone listens to me. The
persona.
Exactly. And then it just rubs him the wrong way. And then at first I didn't think anything was going to come of it, and then he tries to ring him back as he hangs up, and I was like, oh, maybe he is going to do it. And then a few minutes later, the teacher saying it, she's like, he took his life today. I was like,
I think can you go back now? But we were just basically saying that they were basically the same at, in school, one to one, they're the same, but then obviously he has this character, and then the teacher breaks the news. But and the other thing as well, it was going through my head at the time, is like, he's just playing this character and he doesn't realize the consequences having. So when someone rings up like that, he hasn't got the tools. But then the other question is, should he have the tools? Should a person that's broadcasting, just telling their point of view or their opinion, should they be the people to have those tools? It's a very strange one. But I think, and after that, the film takes a dark turn. But
you're right though about the tools and stuff. Realistically, like, as we were saying, you'll have consequences of what you say, what you do. But if someone was to say, text you, or like, oh, I listen to your podcast, and then start saying like, oh, you made me feel this way, at the end of the day, that's not your job to make them feel a particular way. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So it would be hard to blame that fella Mark on this. And again, that's probably how he feels. He feels then going forward, oh, that was my fault. So it's a bit of a shame, but bit of a scary moment in the film, to be honest.
And then, as you're saying, like, it takes a dark turn. So that's when kind of the feds get involved, if you will. So this obviously shines a light on what he's doing, and so the FCC get involved, and it kind of gets the news crews start coming into town. It's like, who is this guy? Who is Harry Hardon? And he's like trying to run away from this, but at the same time, the girl, or the female character, the kind of love interest, is kind of pushing him to keep doing it, because she thinks that it's important that he does. And he's like, I can't keep doing this. Like, people are, this fella died and this got so much attention, but so that's where it kind of just starts snowballing. But it was, on that side note, you brought up Malcolm in the Middle. Like, that was a seriously underrated TV show.
Big time.
Seriously, when I was watching this today, I remember that skit, that scene. It was like, because he basically gets shut down by the FCC because he Hal, the father in Malcolm in the Middle, he told it like it was. It was fucking brilliant. But it's like, I that's a seriously good scene. I'm gonna post that on the Instagram as well. So we're up to that point now where it takes a turn, right? So there's a few points in this that I just thought were unintentional comedy gold, like the characters and stuff, because, as we said, there's a banging 90s off this film, and it's like, and it's good. It kind of dates it a bit, but also at the same time, it's like some of the acting is bad, but it's funny bad. I'll give you a couple of examples and let me know what you think about this. So there's one girl who's listening to the radio station. Her name is Paige, and she's kind of like the quintessential perfect character. She, she's rich, and she gets perfect grades, and like her dad's pushing her to go to Yale, like an elite Ivy League school. And there's at one point where she's listened to all the broadcasts from Harry, and she basically takes all her awards and her jewelry and puts them in the microwave and blows it up. And I was like, well, you could have just threw them out, like.
Yeah.
And I was like, I thought it was like, it was so unnecessarily, that was so good. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then she shows up to like the parent teacher meeting board thing after that, and she has a black eye, and I was like, she obviously had a knock with her dad or something like that, or her parents, because she's like walking around in bits with a black eye. That's what she gets for blowing up the house. But yeah, I did. What did you think? Did you like? I just thought it was very strange, and it was hilarious, unintentional comedy gold.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that scene is gas. It's like as you said, yeah, it's just pure ham. Do you know what I mean? It's just hammed up acting. That's all it is. And then you said, could have just thrown them in the bin. Literally could have thrown them in the bin and set the bin on fire at the back if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, making a statement. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost like, oh yeah, this is the kind, as we were saying, like this is the kind of guy that's telling us to do this. And realistically, he hasn't told them to do anything. Do you know what I mean? They're just going with this, and they're like, oh yeah, he's anti this, that, and the other. But yeah, he's getting great grades in school, and he's sitting there with his mouth shut like all the time. But they're thinking, oh yeah, this is what he would like, this is what he would do.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, he doesn't do any of this. He walks around his house and he says a few like words to his man, like, and his dad, stuff like. And that thing, his man, they are a pure, like, it's a pure suburban home. Like, I mean, they're just like a nice family kind of thing. And he's pure just, I'd say he's just raging because of that, to be honest with you. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I think the backstory of it is like he moves from like his old neighborhood, and he kind of feels isolated forever. And this leads me on to the next point, because I thought this was hilarious all through the second watch there yesterday when I was watching it. So Mark's parents, right? They they bought him this long wave or shortwave broadcasting set because to talk to his friends, because they moved. He's probably one of the only people in the neighborhood to have this equipment, because it looks like fairly expensive equipment. His father is the superintendent Chalmers of this movie, so he has all the access to the school files and ever. Not 1 minute do they suspect him through the whole film that this might be the guy.
Yeah, they don't think at all. And I wouldn't mind a few times they're like, is that a beer in your hand? Oh, he's downstairs smoking. He's this, that, and that. It's like, go down and just have a look. Or I'm sure you could hear them in the house. Do you know what I mean? You hear roaring, these monologues and playing music at ridiculous volumes.
Yeah, and I think they've done it intentionally as well. It's like, oh, they're so, like oblivious to it. I think it was kind of an intentional joke almost, but that I just found that was hilarious. And then the one point that they do suspect it, they go down, and the female character Nora, she's there, and like they're just so happy that like there's a girl in the house that like basically he's socializing. There's like, oh, carry on, nothing to see here.
Literally. Yeah, it's the definition of like parent being so far separated from their kids. That's what it is. It's like even nowadays it does happen. Like in my shop and stuff, people come in, they're like, oh, the young fella's always on the PlayStation, going on about it. Oh, he's had to fleece me for 50 quid, he wants credit for Fortnite. And I'm like, why don't you bring him out to the park? You know what I mean? Let's just chat to your kids or something. You know what I mean? And then they're always hammering on it, like, oh, he has autism. It's like, or does he just? Do you just not talk to him? Maybe. You know what I mean? It's like, he's always locked in his room. It's like, well, that's what he enjoys. He likes to talk to his friends. You're sitting downstairs getting pissed in your kitchen. What do you expect?
Stop.
It's a good kind of. It reminds me almost about the whole Marilyn Manson thing as well. Around like 2001, Marilyn Manson, Eminem, that kind of thing, where every time something happened, it was blamed on one of those two guys. It felt like, and that's what I feel like when, like, I remember Eminem says it in The Way I Am. I think he says about school shooting and stuff, and then he goes, "And look where it happened, Middle America, where were the parents at?" And it's like, yeah, actually, they're all living in the same house. They're just so far separated from each other because they don't communicate.
Yeah, and it's kind of like this weird for all the kids that are kind of listening to him on his radio station. They have this like echo chamber, like they think they know what's best, but like obviously all the kids obviously see different. Like the one girl, I think it was Paige, she didn't want to go to Yale. She was putting her a certain, like, so much pressure, and she ended up getting a dig off her dad for it because she burned her shit in the microwave. Do you know what I mean? And then there's obviously this guy Malcolm feels so bad, and his parents just think, oh, why can't they just be a normal kid? Like, so there's all this stuff going on that, and it's a good point about the kind of early 2000s, like in that film Bowling for Columbine. It's about the Columbine shooting.
Yeah.
And Marilyn Manson steps in. They kind of, now I know we can't see Marilyn Manson in the same light as we used to, because apparently he's a sex offender. But
of course, yeah.
but he made a good point in that documentary. He was basically saying, basically like, what would you have said to them? And he was like, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have just listened to what they had to say. And I think that kind of sums up perfectly. Like, I know it's only a soundbite or whatever, but it kind of makes sense in this context for this film as well.
Yeah, dead on.
Yeah.
They're just looking for a person to blame almost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than look inward. I'm just like, oh, but maybe I should have talked to him. Maybe I should have like went along with his interests and just even sat down and be like, oh, what are you doing today? This simple stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Just showed more attention, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I suppose that kind of takes you then into the kind of final act of the film, where basically the FCC are on his tail. So he also becomes a MacGyver all of a sudden, and like wires up his ma's Jeep to broadcast remotely around the neighborhood. So him and Nora are driving around, and he's basically doing his last send off, and there's a big riot happening, and the FCC are tracking him down in a fucking helicopter. But, what did you think of that last scene? I actually thought it was cool on rewatching it. But...
yeah, it's deadly. It's a bit like it's a bit much, I thought at first, but then I'm like, no, it probably would have happened that way.
Yeah,
it's especially like America's very over the top to begin with, so it probably would happen that way. But yeah, I loved it. I actually thought that scene was class, like the Jeep and the fact that it's almost like a real fuck you to them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you want to shut me down? All right, Grant, I'll just hire up louder. You can't stop this right now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you can spend all your money on your helicopters to follow me around. You're not going to do anything about it. Do you know what I mean? You can't block it. So I thought it was deadly. Yeah, it's a real, I suppose, full circle moment for him as well, because he started off like the in-your-face kind of broadcaster, and then now he's quite literally the in-your-face broadcaster in the Jeep. So I thought it was pretty cool, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought it was a good way to end the film, because I couldn't really see another way to end it when I was thinking about it, because you're right, it is a bit over the top, like, but at the same time, it's like, I couldn't see where else it would have went, that kind of that film, the ending of it. And at the end, he kind of gets taken away in the paddy wagon, and he's just like, his tagline, which is like, oh, well, so be it. And he gets taken away. So, yeah, like, all in all, like, I only seen this film first time about 2 years ago, and this time rewatch it. I think it's got rewatchable factor. What do you think about that? Do you think like it's a rewatcher?
Absolutely, yeah. Like, it feels like something that I like. You definitely have to like turn it on again, but you could recommend it to people. Do you know what I mean? Just like, oh yeah, like the way you recommended it to me, I'll have no problem then. I mean, let my mates know. I was like, oh yeah, check that out. It was actually pretty good. Like, because as I said, it has that element that everyone has felt a certain way like that. Like anti everything at one stage in your life you did. Almost like a gatekeeper as well, where he's like, I'm the cool guy. I like this. I mean, I like this music. Everyone gets like that at some stage in your life. When you're 17 and all you want to listen to is the heaviest and fastest music, or all you want to listen to is this. Nobody else can do it like them. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you don't even. And the funny thing is, you don't even want to. As I said, you're trying to be a gatekeeper and this and that. You don't even want to go further than your own kind of loop either. Like when I was around that age, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, stuff like that. But I wouldn't go any further. Like a few of my mates would listen to like heavy stuff, like real heavy stuff, like Morbid Angel and all. And I'd be like, no, that's right. It's like that's just how you are at that age. So I think because everyone has felt like that, this film is a good watch for anyone.
Yeah.
Like, because we've all been teenagers, I mean, we've all acted out a bit. So I think it's definitely rewatchable. Definitely could recommend it as well. Yeah.
That's a good show, actually. Yeah. It's kind of got that thing where, you hit the nail on the head there. It's just kind of got a few factors that are rewatchable. It's comedy. It's also, it gets a bit serious. And then there's a kind of good kind of, not action, I say, but suspenseful end, I would say. That was basically it. So yeah, like that was kind of a good way to round it off, but I'm glad you enjoyed it anyway. I was only looking for stuff. I was like, something. It's hard to find something you probably both people or one person hasn't seen, because everything is so available. But like, think about this one as well. I haven't seen it on any streaming sites at all. So I think it's there's probably a rights issue there. But if anybody wants to watch it, check it out. It's on YouTube actually in clip format, but it's pretty good. Like, there's no issues with watching it around. So.
Yeah, that's where I watched it. Yeah, I watched it on YouTube with just like part 1, part 2 kind of thing. Yeah, in the video, just let it roll into the other one. That could be alright.
You're like watching it. It's like, what's this, 2015 or something like that? Like, everything's on Netflix now. Why isn't this on Netflix?
Yeah, it's mad. I'd say it is a rights issue. I'd say all the tunes in it and all. I'd say. Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah, because they're kind of like indie tunes or like punk tunes kind of thing. So yeah, but that's the crack with it, Warren. I don't know if you've got any final comments to sign off with, or happy.
Yeah, in terms of like the end, like the film itself, I'd recommend it. Go watch it if you're listening to this and you've never seen it. I never even heard of it until you said it. You're like, oh, pump up the volume. I thought it was actually a documentary about music. That's what I thought initially. And then you were like, oh, it's about this kid has a pirate radio. And I was like, oh, savage, even better. So yeah, I'd recommend it. As I said, we've all been at that age where you want to act out. So
yeah, you were saying about acting out, and I was thinking to myself there, I was like, yeah, some of us like myself are still acting out at times, but
yeah, you're doing your own way now, you know what I mean? But you can't go that far anymore.
yeah, 100%. So I think that wraps up the film. Then, what's coming up for you next, Warren? What's on the podcast next? Have you got any juicy stuff coming up, or?
Yeah, next on the podcast, we're probably gonna do this thing. Like, I'm gonna name a wrestler, but whoever listens to this probably doesn't know him. I don't know. Maybe he's do. I don't know, but we're gonna do a video about what's next for Daniel Bryan. He's apparently gone from WWE. I don't think he is, but whatever. And we're gonna go on what's next for him, and then we will probably jump into maybe something classic, maybe something from around 1999, 2000 or something, just to kind of go back and relive something like that. But yeah, that's probably what's coming up next on the podcast anyway, within the next week or so.
Savage stuff. I love a bit of nostalgia, so check it out if anybody's interested in that. So, Warren, thanks a million for jumping on, and I think we shall do it soon again. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no bother at all. Anytime. Yeah, I'm up for it. I think it's deadly.
Sounds class, man. Thanks a million, right? I'll chat to you soon.
No problem, man. Talk to you.
Take it easy. Bye.